Hi, Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road, where my guest today is Marta Gabre Tsadick.
Yes.
Is that right?
Perfect.
The founder of Project Mercy, along with others. But I want everyone to hear your story. You grew up
Thank you.
in Ethiopia, born in 1932 to missionary parents. What was that like?
Oh, that was wonderful. The thing I remember the most in my childhood growing up is I grew up with a lot of children. We used to sit in front of the church on the floor, so many of us, and tell verses. And it's not a competition, but we told verses of birth of Christ and any of those that excited us, each one of us. So that's what I remember the most.
You memorized Bible verses at an
Oh,
early
yes.
age.
Oh, yes.
How in the world did you decide to go to the United States for a college education?
I was married and had two sons. And my husband was also a missionary at heart, very much. He worked for the Ministry of Education, but he was a missionary. He was very, very generous. He would get his salary and finish it before the end of the month, giving it away, and he would borrow from the office and give. So as a very young girl, when I realized that, I thought I should really go to college, and so that I can help earn the living.
Who came to the United States to go to college? Your whole family?
No, my husband and I agreed that I will go for 4 years, and then he would join me with the children. So my mother had my two sons, and he was working for the Ministry of Education, and I came, but he was never able to come. So when I finished school, the day I graduated, I didn't even go to the dining room for lunch. My suitcase was packed on my bed, and I just picked that, and a friend whisked me to the airport, and there I was.
Back to Ethiopia.
Back to Ethiopia.
And what did you do when you got home? Did you have a career in mind and
Yes, I
pursue that?
did. I really did. I prepared to be a teacher. I always wanted to be with this many children that I grew up with, the whole idea of many children. And when I got back, I was the very first married woman to have left my children and came all the way to America to get my education. And I had no idea that anyone else knew that but me. But when I got there, it was all over the paper. They would just keep writing stories about me. And then before I know it, I was asked to come to the palace one day, and I got appointed to be the liaison officer to Point Four. That's an American organization that was helping in Africa in those days. Like the Peace Corps came later. So while I was doing that, that is under the Ministry of Education, and I haven't even received my 1 month's salary yet, I got called again to the palace, and I got appointed to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, totally outside of my line. The only thing I was told is, you're the only one who can do it. What is it I'm going to do? I wanted to ask the emperor, but the prime minister told me no. And they whisked me out so quickly out of there. And I still didn't know what I was going to be doing that only me could do. So later I found out that I was to be head of giving citizenship, passport, visas for foreigners to come into Ethiopia, their stay permit, ocean right, air right, It was a lot of fast learning because I had dived in an ocean and I didn't know how to swim.
What would be the population of Ethiopia at the time?
We were 25 million.
Okay. Kind of a funny question. Did they pay you a lot of money compared to what
No,
you thought you would earn
government
as a
doesn't
teacher?
pay very much money. The salary is very low. Yeah. But the responsibility was very, very high. And I served there for 7 years.
Did you learn a lot from the people who had been there a long time?
Yes, I had to. I learned a lot, but studying the files, the past files, taught me a lot more because I'm just that way person. I need to really know it from the very bottom source. I did learn a lot from the people, but most of my learning came from the files.
And then around 1967
7 years later, my department changed and I became head of Asian affairs. We didn't have diplomatic relation with China, and Mr. Chun Lai had something he wanted to express. He asked the government of Ethiopia if he could come to Ethiopia, but since we didn't have a diplomatic relation, he couldn't come into the city. So I was the one who had to go and meet with him at the airport and discuss his plans and his wishes relationship with Ethiopia.
Amazing.
It is. It was.
Now, how in the world do you become a senator?
About 12 years later, after I have been in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, then I became a senator.
And was there an election or are you appointed?
Senate is appointed, the House is elected in Ethiopia. So I was appointed.
And how did your life change as a senator?
My life changed because I was the only woman coming, the first one, only woman coming to the Senate. And my fear was I will not be able to say anything. And I walked in 125 elderly, very experienced people. And I knew I was the youngest and I was the only woman, and my opportunities to express my ideas would be so limited. The story was different. I have never raised my hand to speak that I was not given the floor.
Amazing.
My elderly people, the Speaker of the Senate, were so generous to me. And I tried my best to learn the things that are important for the country.
Do you see the hand of God at that time moving you along in those positions?
The amazing thing is what my parents have instilled in me. Not only do I see how the Lord is taking me from one place to another, and certain times at certain situation, I even really see why he did that, especially after the event. I understand. That's why I really feel it's so important for parents to be close to their children and instill the Word of God in them, because I needed it all my life. If I had any success, my success came from my childhood hearing the Word.
Wow.
Yes.
That's powerful. So in the 1970s, you're an Ethiopian senator, and your family becomes a target of persecution. Is that related to the communist coup? And could you describe that setting for us?
Yes. Well, that was a terrible time for our country. What has happened is I tried to resign from being a senator. And I submitted my resignation, and I had an idea that we were going to be taken over by a communist. And there is a long story as to how I found that out. I actually did know how many communism leadership were contacting our young people. It all started in our universities and colleges. And when I learned that, I warned the emperor that this is happening, and I did not want to be in the Senate now. I wanted to step back and see what else I could do. But I never were given the resignation. It was never accepted. While I'm waiting on that is when the country was taken over. This is in 1974.
The communist element takes over Ethiopia. Is the emperor forced to flee? Are you forced to flee? What happened in that regard?
No, he had gone to Somalia for a conference. And before he left is when I talked to him about what's happening in our country. And I was hoping he will not return. He will stay away. But he didn't. And when he came back, again, I got to see him, and I said, this is happening in such and such a place, and this is how I happen to know it. And then he said, you are talking. These are all my children. I brought them up. They will not do that. And it is true they are his children. The emperor visited the schools once a month. Every school in the city he visited. If one time he brought cake to this school, next time he went, he took fruit to them. That's how much he knew as to what his children should have next. So
Wow.
That's why he calls all of us his children. But when the enemy sneaks in, he catches the very best and tries. So that's what happened, and the country was overtaken. They put him in a house of arrest, and later they killed him.
Really?
Yes.
And where did you go?
Well, he was in a house of arrest for a year. And on a Wednesday morning, no, not morning, Wednesday on the noon news, they said the emperor has died and the funeral has been done, no mourning, from his previous disease. But the British embassy had knighted his doctor, Professor Litted. He was a Britisher. At that ceremony, my husband and I were present, and there was a great Ethiopian doctor as well. And he also was there. The British ambassador and ambassadress, knowing our relationship, said to us, if you want to privately talk with the doctors, this room is empty. And we went in to talk with them. They told us how he is, because they see him. And they said he even jokes, and he is in good health, no medical issue at all. This was only about 3 weeks after when they announced he died from natural death. So that's why I really believe he has been killed. Because we talked with this doctor, my husband and I, and that he was well. So anyway, the announcement was made on a Wednesday. On Thursday, we heard that we were on the list to be arrested. And we escaped Sunday night at 8 o'clock.
Where did you go? How did you go?
We had heard that people were escaping and who was helping them, and we contacted that person, and he was supposed to have taken us out Thursday night. He didn't Friday night, he didn't Saturday night, and we thought he was going to turn us in. And Sunday night, finally, he sent a vehicle to pick us up. And we didn't want to go in his vehicle because we were afraid this much time has elapsed and we may be turned in. He's still alive, so he knows this. And we said, we'll drive my Mercedes. And we told our kids, we've been telling them we're taking them for a weekend. So you're going for a weekend. It's Sunday night. Very kind, very understanding children. They didn't really question at that moment. I guess they noticed how tense we were. They just got into the car. We didn't take anything except one picnic meal with us. And we drove my car, left the mess, and we told him where we will be. So they came to that spot and we noticed they were alone, so we got into their vehicle and escaped. A trip that should have taken us only about, at the most, 24 hours, took us 7 days.
7 days?
Because the vehicle was in a terrible shape. It kept breaking up, and we were out of food, out of water for our children that we gave them. My husband very wisely thought there is no other water but in the radiator, and he pumped that out and gave it to them, and that's how they survived.
And where did you go?
7 days took us to Kenya. When we crossed the border, we went straight to the Kenyan police station and turned ourselves in. We did
As refugees, so to speak?
Yes. Well, we told them that we have broken the law of your country and we have come into your country illegally, so whatever you want to do with us. And instead of doing anything harmful to us, they first showed us where the restaurant is, and they said, you go and feed your children and get something to eat. And that's what we did, and we came back. And they told us to stay in one place, and they asked us, who do we know? We really didn't want to say who we knew. One thing I really like to express is, money is a vehicle. Without money, we can't do. But there is something else we can't do without. That is our faith and friends.
Amen.
Friendship is the most important thing on earth for me and my entire family. Yes, we knew President Kenyatta because I hosted many, many heads of states. We knew his daughter. So we just kept quiet for a couple of days, and then we thought, well, maybe if you call so-and-so, now, of course, not the president, but a name. And as soon as they heard, they sent a vehicle for us, and they took us to their best resort. Anyway, we survived it for a week, and then we went to Nairobi, and then they helped us. In those days, you can't get visa to live anywhere as a refugee. You don't have passport. So again, the family helped us, and we got issue of a temporary document, and we were whisked to Greece.
To Greece?
Yes.
How long were you there?
7 months.
Oh my goodness. What did you do while you were there?
That's very interesting. We started helping Ethiopian refugees who were coming.
Oh my goodness. So in many ways you could say Project Mercy started there.
Actually, Project Mercy started in Kenya. An amazing man, I think the whole world knows him. His name is Hugh Pilkington. He is the son of the Pilkington glass owners. He was an only son. He loved Ethiopia so much, again, friendship, that he came to Kenya with all his wealth, bought in one compound, there were 5 beautiful homes. He bought the entire thing, and he bought a Piper Cup plane. He flew, so he used to come to Djibouti and pick up Ethiopian refugees. He used to mostly to Djibouti, but he did go once in a while to Kenya as well. And he housed them in his beautiful home and took care of them. And we knew Hugh, so we approached him about the young Ethiopian women that were in the streets of Kenya. He again helped us rent a whole floor of one of the tall buildings in Nairobi.
Oh my
we
goodness.
Housed all the Ethiopian young women into that building and sent them to a secretarial school. This was done only because of Hugh Pilkington. So he's amazing.
When you came back from Greece, where did you go? After 7 months in Greece, where did you go?
We were accepted as refugees into America thanks to Marian and Ross Adair.
Ross Adair was a friend of my dad's.
Oh,
my dad was a state senator when Ross Adair was a congressman, and I remember him as a little boy really well. He was ambassador to Ethiopia.
Yes,
yeah.
That's how we knew them, and we were very close. Marian and I started the National Prayer Breakfast in Ethiopia. And Marian invited several people from Fort Wayne, Indiana, that came to our very first women's prayer breakfast. We were very, very close. We love them. We still think of them, and we still miss them. So that's how we ended up in Fort Wayne.
Amazing. And then do you create a nonprofit while you're in the United States for Project Mercy?
Yes,
and
we did.
Talk about what that is and what you've done over the last decades.
We started Project Mercy here in Fort Wayne, and three of us founded. Fran and Chuck Dickinson from the Fort Wayne Rescue Mission, who also received that with love. Fran was one of the ladies that came to Ethiopia for the first prayer breakfast, and a very close friend of Marian and Ross. So Fran Dickinson and her husband Chuck, Deme, and myself started Project Mercy. And it is now 38 years old. We worked in 7 African countries during the communist time, because Deme and I had committed to the Lord while we were getting into Kenya, before we got there, that from here on, 2 of us will not work for a living. Whoever gets a job, how low the standard of our life will be, that will be it. The second person will go to run Project Mercy. Deme got a job first, so rightly, and then of course that's why I'm the one kind of been running Project Mercy, but now we are blessed. 2 of our sons have joined us, and Project Mercy is doing very, very, very well.
And you provide food and shelter, provisions, education. We first went and asked the community that invited us as to what they want us to do for them. They asked for a clinic and a school, so that's what we started first. But they had to invest with us. We never do unless the community invests with us. It's a partnership. Makes sense.
Then we now have a hospital instead of a clinic. We have a school with 1,600 children. Amongst our children some doctors have come out, several engineers have already come out.
This is in Ethiopia?
In Ethiopia. And then another community, we found out that children in Ethiopia, unlike the way it used to be, a country of milk-rich country, some children have never had a glass of milk in their life. So we started cattle breeding. So that's a really sizable organization now. We are in the process of finishing up home for children, so they orphan the children so they can grow up with parents and grandparents. All the surrogate, an amazing lady by name Carol Boyd has studied how to take care of orphaned children, even how to hug them. There is a big difference. They have feelings. Some of them feel responsible for the death of their parents. There are just so many memories, bitter things in their life. So there are ways you have to handle them. So Carol has teaching our caregivers, and we are soon going to have the children. We have the children already, but in a new home. And there would only be 6 kids in a home, a mother and an aunt and grandparents and aunt and uncle. This is all organized.
Marta, you are an amazing story. When God prompted Philip to evangelize the Ethiopian,
Amen.
He had to have you in mind in Acts 8. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you very much for asking me, and it's a greatest honor for me.
When you hear a story like Marta's, you got to think, wow, is God using me in the highest capacity possible? I would invite you to pray a prayer this week, every day. Hey, God, give me your heart. And you will begin to see how God will move in you to have His heart to serve others and bring His restoration to others, to help make others new again. And at the end of the day, you will learn how much joy that brings to your life, the purpose that it will bring to your life. Just pray what I'll call today Marta's prayer. Hey, God, give me your heart.